Well, good morning, everybody. So first of all, just a quick kind of update. I apologize I didn't get a video out yesterday, and today's videos are coming out in the middle of the day. I had to get out here to an event in Idaho, and I got stuck in Phoenix for 9 hours. So we had a little bit of a flight problem there. So I didn't get into about 4:30 in the morning Central Time, and I had to be at the conference center at 6 a.m. So it was kind of a night of no sleep here. I had a great meeting, though, with these folks in Idaho. It was so much fun. So then last night I had to get from there to Seattle, and then from Seattle to the Tri-Cities area, like Pasco, Kennewick, right here. And again, got stuck in Seattle last night for 5 hours. So had a little bit of a rough go of it with travel, but I'm back. Kind of got caught up a little bit on sleep, and I'm ready to talk about weather. So just wanted to explain what was going on here. So, okay, I got a quick story for all of you. If you need to get this done in 90 seconds. We are watching the jet stream really set up to target California very soon. And also we're going to watch a pretty sizable series of pulses of moisture come through the south. Now, how far into the southeast will this eventually make it? Because we know we've been talking about some drier conditions in through here. We're going to see that in just a few minutes. But this is going to be the kind of the main story for the U.S. over the next 10 days. Secondly, South America continues to be just a major area of risk development. And what I'm talking about here is we're going to explain at the end of this video why we continue to see such very dry conditions showing up here. And in addition to this, with the flooding to the south, the heat. So we just take a look. This would be day 5 through 10 in the forecast, and we're looking at temperature anomalies in Celsius that are getting up here toward almost 10 degrees C above average. This is extremely hot weather and extremely dry weather, and there's a lot of questions as to what this is doing to the quality of the crop early in the season. The last couple things we're going to talk about is the United States. We're really just kind of pushing our way toward a pattern. If we just look out here from the GFS progression for the next 5 days, to day 5 through 10, and then to day 10 through 15, there's a lot of mild air moving into the eastern two-thirds of North America. And we've just made a case for the last several videos that we don't have a real reason to see a lot of cold air coming in to much of the United States, at least in the near term, probably through Thanksgiving and maybe beyond that. What I'm looking for here is big high latitude blocking, and I just don't see it. And the last thing we need to discuss today is going to be the newest update from the National Multimodal Ensemble. This is the newest December precipitation anomaly forecast. We're going to come back to this again at the end and talk about the influences of El Nino on it. Because right now the atmosphere is doing very El Nino-y things, and we just want to know, is this something we're going to see on repeat? Will El Nino kind of play an outsized role in our winter pattern, or is it going to continue to be a part of it but not the dominant driver? That's some of the questions we're trying to answer. So that's what we're going to cover today, and what I want to get into now is what's going on with the jet stream, and I think a lot of the stories coming out of the Pacific. So this is a water vapor animation, so we're looking here at basically just upper level atmosphere where the upward motion is and where the downward motion is. So whenever you see these kind of shades of color like you get in through here or right in through here, these really bright colors, that represents sinking motion in the atmosphere. Where we see these plumes of these higher water vapor kind of regions, this is where I got a lot of rising motion. And what we'll be watching over the next 2 weeks is what's coming out on these waves that keep breaking out like this. Okay, there's one right now, see it right there coming toward Mexico. That's going to influence Texas. We're going to watch a second pulse coming out of this area, being aided by stuff going on in the North Pacific. That's eventually going to be a part of the story that hits California with quite a bit of moisture. And I think that the story continues with what it's been, and that is we have to look top down and see what the jet stream pattern is doing. So as we play through Thursday here and getting our way out toward the weekend, we have such an incredibly strong piece of the jet that's exiting the East Coast, but it's not in the right position to drive a big system up the East Coast. There's no curvature to this, and it's offshore too much. What we've been talking about for the last, 10 days or so is that the jet stream is expected by the time we get out there toward mid-month to retract in the Pacific. So you can see this here. But the interesting thing about this retraction is we're not building a massive ridge into the West Coast as this happens. Sometimes when you get a jet stream retraction, see this ridge going into Alaska? That's sometimes right here. And when that occurs in the wet season for the West, that is just a knockout punch for the Pacific Northwest in terms of precip. So the flow slows down, which is going to change the precipitation compared to what we've had as of late. But this is not like the super dry, extended heat kind of setup. That's good. If you're in the Northwest, that's all a good, very, very good thing. We do see the jet stream though building into a bit of a ridge here in the midsection of the country, and this is what's helping with the warmth here. But there it is. That's the piece of the subtropical jet that I'm most interested in watching develop here for parts of the southwest and the south going forward. So this is the 15th. Let's go ahead and play out there past that toward the 17th, 18th, and 19th. And again, the farther out I look, I'm watching for anything that blocks this pattern up and ruins it in terms of this kind of November, December timeframe. And the good news is that I don't have any sense of it here. I don't see any major high latitude blocking that's just going to shut the whole thing down. So yeah, we have jet stream retraction. See, it's back over here toward Japan, but no big ridges to speak of in this area, and the subtropical jet begins to take over. So with that as a setup, let's kind of just walk through what this means for the country. All right, last 3 days, this is what we've seen. Most of our moisture has been in the Pacific Northwest. We've finally gotten some precip to get down into California, including some snow at the highest elevations here in the Sierra Nevada. And we've watched a system roll right across the U.S.-Canada border, bring quite a bit of precip to the Great Lakes here and exit. But most of the country, we've missed out on a lot of this. If we just look at where we expect big changes in this map, so this is the last 30 days of precipitation as a percent of normal. With the moisture that's coming in here, this is going to be outstanding for some very dry parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. We're going to continue to work against the drought in Texas. And as you saw, better moisture coming into the southwest with this deep low that continues to be forecast for the west coast. So let's kind of get in and look at all of it. All hazards weather map today. Got a few areas of stronger winds we're continuing to watch. We do have frost advisories out for parts of Northern California, and there's some snow right now happening in the forecast over parts of the the Rocky Mountains. But other than that, pretty uneventful map across the country. So let's just go right into the high-res models. We're going to pick this about 10 a.m. this morning. So we can see one low that's still moving over parts of the Great Lakes, adding a bit more precip there as we work our way through the day today. And there's our snow in the Rocky Mountains. Now what's really interesting about this pattern is this front gets dragged through this evening over parts of the Midwest and extends all the way down here. And it's got a pretty good punch of some colder air right behind it. And what's neat about it is we're going to kind of mix a couple of air masses together. So here's the cold front that's moving now through parts of the eastern Great Lakes, down to Kentucky, getting into Tennessee and Arkansas, down over the Red River. Now watch this. This is the pulse of kind of tropical moisture we mentioned a moment ago, and it's going to go right over the top of it. So you can actually see, watch the front, it's right there. There's the cold front, and here's the more tropical air running over the top of it, and they're going to kind of just pass one another in the atmosphere. And so you're going to have colder air at the surface, but this big plume of moist air aloft that's got some heat into it, and we're going to therefore produce quite a bit of precipitation out of this coming into Texas. Where am I in time? This is midday on Thursday. So we kind of see one system exit east, possibly some light freezing rain in New England, snow. Again, we talked about this earlier this week on the northern side of this, but this will be interesting to watch how much rain comes out of this as it goes through Texas and Oklahoma, Arkansas, and toward the lower Mississippi River Valley. Quick update in Memphis, we're still about 5 feet below low stage, so an improvement over the last couple of weeks, but we still need quite a bit more moisture in the entire Mississippi basin to kind of continue to aid in the Mississippi River. So this is getting into the overnight hours on Thursday into Friday morning, and we'll watch that moisture try to make its way by midday Friday into the southeast. And remember, this is that corridor that's been extremely dry. In fact, I'm just going to show it to you again. Right in through there, some places are less than 10% of average precipitation. Some places, no precipitation in the last 30 days. Okay, we need to step up, though, to our longer range models to see where this all goes. So I got the GFS on the left, European on the right, as we normally do. What we see here is a very similar setup as the high-res NAM as to where that moisture is going to be going here into tomorrow and then eventually into Friday. Now, while that's occurring, we're going to have our next frontal boundary coming right here into the Pacific Northwest, very well timed in both models as some snow leaves parts of the eastern Canadian Maritimes. Now, again, we're going to watch in the models to see how much of this moisture does get into the southeast. We kind of lose the strength of that front, and therefore we don't deliver the rainfall into this area quite as well as originally hoped. But it's not the only time we've got a chance for some moisture to get into the parts of the southeast here. So where are we in time? This is out Saturday night, getting into Sunday morning, getting into Sunday afternoon and evening, and now here we are on Monday morning. Now, next week, we're going to watch another pulse of moisture come through parts of the south. I believe that the European model has a better handle on this than the GFS does. Certainly, the skill scores are right now a little bit higher for the operational run of the European model. But both models do agree that by midweek next week, there will be a system off the west coast. Its exact position and strength still not quite fully resolved between the two models, but the ensembles are pointing at it. So we're going to see this the setup here across the west coast to really deliver what could be quite a bit of moisture into California after coming through parts of coastal Oregon and Washington. Now, the reason why the models look so different for the southeast is because the GFS has tossed a big area of high pressure in through here and has just pushed any chance at precip farther to the south. European model doesn't quite have it, so that's why there's more moisture coming into the south or our cotton belt in this particular setup. But the reality of the story here is that once we get out there to next Wednesday, Thursday, both models continue to point toward a pretty sizable West Coast system that has a lot of support in the ensembles. It's got support in the operational runs, and it could be a big snowmaker for the Sierra Nevada and bring some of the first rains for the season into the southern half of California and also into parts of Arizona, getting into the Four Corner states as well. So I figured we'd just take a look at some kind of national numbers here. Let's just play this out through the next 7 days to kind of get an idea on total precip from the European model. So that's about 7 days out. Heaviest rains again down here, like Houston over toward New Orleans, but all throughout this area we're looking at the chances are getting 1.5 inches to 2 inches. The system currently going through the Great Lakes, overall not a major producer of precip, and you can see through the next 7 days there's a lot of places here that are not going to see much. But if we go from day 7 out to day 10, watch the west. That's where we get a pretty big push of moisture coming into that area. So I thought we'd break it down into a couple of regions just to get an idea on these wetter regions here. And if we just play this out through the first push of moisture that gets us through our start of our weekend here, we can see, again, there's the chance for some places picking up a couple of inches of rainfall. That's just the first pulse of moisture down here in the south. We then see the second one, there it is, coming in next Monday, Tuesday. That's what gives the whole area a halfway decent chance of seeing 1 to 2 inches of rainfall with heavier amounts, some of them getting up here, well off the color bar in the 6, 7, 8 inch range down across the Gulf Coast, again from Houston even farther south and west, but all the way over here toward New Orleans. That's going to be our wettest area looking out here through the next 8 or 9 days. If we go to the west, we can add up total accumulated precipitation as well. So there's our next front coming through Thursday into Friday. Not a major rainfall maker here, but it is another round of some rain. And then we see going into the weekend, by Sunday, Monday, that's when the low begins to form across the west there, right over in California. And I'm playing out till next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so we have this chance of really delivering some very heavy rainfall into California. And as we saw, most of that being the first chance at getting some heavy rain into that area. Be critical to see how much gets into Arizona. These are some very dry areas that we watched develop over the summer. And then since, in fact, when I was stuck in Phoenix, it was 91 degrees Fahrenheit at like 7 o'clock in the evening. So still a lot of heat and very dry down here in the southwest. On the snow side of it, let's just add this up real quick. We see the snow spreading across parts of Manitoba through Ontario into Quebec. There's our snow that's expected here. There's a good chance at 4, 5, 6 inches of snow in the mountains. In Colorado, some of that's spreading down into New Mexico as well. But the major changes are going to be in the west. Take a look at this. This is starting on Sunday, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there it is. You're going to start to see it really add up in the models out here when that low does kind of build its way into the west coast. So we'll watch that very carefully because it could be a big snowmaker for the Sierra Nevada, kind of the first of the year, first big snowmaker of the year. But again, it's out there, midweek next week, so we've got some time to watch this all develop. There is support for it, though, in the models, and that's the trough we're going to be looking at here. But overall, as I play from about November 18th on, I just don't, this trough is not connected to cold air, so it's really more supportive of the subtropical jet stream than being a part of the polar jet. And this flow is just resisting any major blocking episodes, be it over Alaska or over the Canadian prairie or here over the Hudson Bay or even over Greenland. So because of that pattern, if we do continue just to get flow coming across the country, most of our forecast models say that week 2 has a better chance at being wet. It's not like it's going to be an absolute soaker outside of what we've been talking about for California and parts of the South, but just don't count it out as being a pattern that continues to produce. If there's an area that could be drier during this, it might be parts of New England and also parts of the Northwest. We just don't have the flow there continuing, remember with the jet retracting, to really just pile up the moisture in those areas. So that's what we got out there for week 2. Let's take a quick talk about the temperatures here. And our frost threat over the next 7 days, this is actually quite common. This is what a normal frost map would look like for this point in November. So no major anomalous temperatures here overall. So what we have is let me rephrase that. No major anomalous temperatures on the cold side. That's what I wanted to say. So we look at the max temperatures, and yeah, there's some chillier air that's in New England, but to see temperatures this time of year, highs in the upper 30s and low 40s, that's not uncommon. This is, though, we've got a lot of warm air that's still here, nosing its way into the Midwest today as we go into tomorrow on Thursday and Friday. There's the cold front that dips down here, but like I said, none of this lasts long. So yeah, we bring the cold front in, the moisture goes over the top of it, a lot of cold rain coming into this area late this week, but watch. As you get into the weekend, there's Saturday and Sunday and Monday, and we start to see more mild air showing back up. The only reason why this stays cooler down here is because of just rain-cooled air into next week. But much of the rest of the country just continues to see more mild air showing up, while what's keeping it cooler in the 60s down here is primarily, again, just rain-cooled air from cloud cover. So as we mentioned, without a major source of cold air, you're just going to watch the next 5 days, roll into day 5 through 10, bringing in a lot of warmth in the Midwest, a lot of the warmth in the central U.S., and then getting out there beyond that. If there's a spot that's cooler, it's going to be in the Southwest, Nevada, Arizona, parts of New Mexico, California. But this isn't cold, you know what I mean? So it's this cooler. I look out there as far as I can, and I don't see a major source of cold air getting into the eastern 2/3 of North America, and we'll just kind of keep watching for that as we go forward. So last two things I want to cover are some longer range outlooks, and I want to talk about South America. So let's go out there and do that. Our next map just shows the current ocean temperatures, and we've watched these evolve. We know that right now the Indian Ocean dipole is a major push on this pattern. And again, just a quick review, strong trade winds here, a rising motion here, sinking motion in this area. El Nino is beginning to exert a bit more influence, so we got enhanced sinking motion in this area. The trade winds are kind of going through a westerly wind burst, a pretty strong one right now, and that's definitely an El Nino signal. We've also continued to see more warmer water surface here, which is kind of just beating back the risk of that central-based or Modoki El Nino that I've heard a few people discussing. I still think it's a bit more of a traditional look. The question is it going to be a major influencer on the pattern? I believe this winter there will be times that it does, but it's not the type of winter where it is the only dominant factor. But what I'll be watching for is if we get all that convection in this area, that just tends to really get the subtropical jet scooting. And so I think that could be an important part of this pattern going forward. What we do see is this. In the next 15 days, the MJO does not want to come to Australia or the Indian Ocean. It wants to live either in the West Pacific or reset over by Africa. And we'd expect that given the strong Indian Ocean dipole and given the strong presence of this westerly wind burst because of the El Nino. So I like this. All the way out there, 7, 8, 9 days from now, we continue to see in red where we have sinking motion in the atmosphere. So there's rising air here and there's rising air over here. And that's a very El Nino-like tropical behavior. But is the jet stream responding in kind, is kind of the bigger question, we have at that point. So I want to show you the newest update from the National Multimodal Ensemble, and we're going to compare it to the European and look out there pretty far. Just a reminder, it was the National Multimodal Ensemble that picked up on the Midwestern drought better than any other model back in April and May. So I've built some trust into this model that I hope it doesn't break. Overall, I personally like and also meteorologically like the setup it's giving for December, January, February. It did push the drier conditions farther into British Columbia, away from what it had for the Pacific Northwest, California, Nevada, Utah. It did trend wetter for much of California, which would be consistent with an El Nino. But my big question has always been, do we actually get split flow? Does it split across the West? And I have more information to say that I don't think it does that all winter than I would say that it does. But this makes a lot of sense to me. And just to kind of couple that with what I showed you on Monday, this is the European model, December, January, February precipitation outlook. You probably noticed that I don't tend to show a lot of temperature graphics, and that is because winter is a very volatile time period for temperature. So if I were to show you one graphic, I don't want it to get stuck in your head that, every day in winter is going to look like, this. My summary for the winter temperature pattern is this, okay? If there's a place I think that sees near normal to cooler than normal temperatures, it'll be parts of the West. I think there would be more days everywhere inside of where I just circled that have above average temperatures than below. Okay, so more warmer days than cooler days when you compare them to average. But this whole setup right now is such that when we do get Arctic outbreaks, okay, they're going to be severe this winter. So you may go, maybe December you got like 10, 15 days in a row where you just don't have a lot of cold air, and then there's a disruption, there's a block that forms, or maybe the polar vortex gets disrupted and it just drops, brutally cold air into the Midwest that moves its way to the east. It has to come through the Canadian prairie. It may get to the Gulf Coast. And I think we're going to see that this winter several times. So let's just kind of leave it at that on the temperature discussion. Okay, to finish, I want to take you to just some discussion about South America. What you're looking at here is October 30th to November 5th. So this is kind of the very end of October, beginning of November. Heat damage days versus heat stress days. So we did back off a little in the excessive heat that was in here, but not in the Amazon and not in northeastern Brazil. Those are areas that continue to stay very, very hot. And I want to make a point about where we've been for the last month. So from the 8th of October to the 8th of November, we've had temperatures throughout much of Brazil's growing area. I mean, we're circling right here better than 70% of their growing area, maybe more than that. And we see a lot of average temperatures that are 4 to, in some places, up to 7 degrees Celsius above average. Now, a lot of times we need some context for numbers like that just to explain how hot it is. So I decided to make this for you real quick. I know I have a lot of viewers that are in the Midwest and in the plains. And so I want to show you in July of 2012, okay, this was, for many of us, our most extensive heat wave in recent memory. The average temperatures for July were only about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius above average. So when I show you that they're averaging that now in spring, and some of these numbers are up like 5, 6, 7 degrees Celsius, that just explains to you how hot it has been in terms of a spring here. Now, on the other side of this, we have to talk about the precipitation. And the biggest anomalies for drought have been mainly in the Amazon. But this is creeping in on parts of, Mato Grosso, Tocantins, Goiás, and places like that. So there have been some regional drought stresses that have developed. What's really killing this pattern is this. We already have the dry conditions in the Amazon. And right now, if you look at where the trade winds are blowing, they're coming up like this, not like this. So the issue here is that if you try to draw air out of the subtropics and then bring it across Brazil, it already is in deficit. Excuse me, it's already in deficit for moisture. And then you put it over some dry air that's in the Amazon, and when that flow comes across, it's got nothing to work with. It's only when we really put the squeeze on it here that it starts to just wring out a whole lot of moisture overall. And that's why when we look out there, we see that, the next 15 days is just killed for moisture. There will be places that I think miss out entirely on rainfall. Now, what I need to study is, historically, how does this correlate with yields? Does a dry October, dry November absolutely destroy yield chances for the crops that are planted during this time of year? Certainly it could impact them, but I don't know the true extent of that damage. And this flooding signal down here in southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, just continues to be very, very strong over the next 15 days. How much of that rain gets into Argentina still remains a wild card that we have to get a better handle on. Lastly, I just want to show you the temperatures going forward. If you look right in through here, okay, we've got places that are going to be averaging for the next 15 days 5 to 8 degrees Celsius above normal. And now you've got some context for what that means. There will be multiple days with high temperatures well into the hundreds here, or approaching about 40 degrees Celsius. So the stress continues for South America, and we're going to have to watch that all week and just watch how this pattern goes. And if there's a sign for it to break, you better believe it. We got to talk about it. It would be huge for Brazil. So I'll leave you there, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.